sports fans. Coach Nik here. Welcome to BBallBreakdown. I'm excited to have Ben Heisler back on the show after a little bit of a hiatus to do a NBA draft show recap and go through the first 10 picks. So Ben, welcome back to the show. And what do you got for us?
It's good to be back with you, Coach. I figured the hiatus usually is good for us, but now that we're in the offseason, the NBA draft is upon us. Let's do a little rapid fire and go through some of these top 10 picks, starting with Andrew Wiggins. We know the athleticism of the KU guard, 6'6". He goes to Cleveland, #1 overall. So how do you think he pairs with Kyrie Irving? And then would you have preferred maybe that they go after a 3? Do you think maybe Parker would have been a better fit for them?
I think that he does fit in okay. He doesn't need the ball. He's not going to over-dribble and score like Kyrie wants to do. I don't think he shoots it as well from long distance, and that's going to be a bigger problem in Coach David Blatt's system that we broke down earlier this week. So there's a lot of interesting issues there that don't quite add up really well to me.
You know what? It's interesting that you say that because I think Wiggins fits, but I think with Parker going #2 to Milwaukee, you know, they basically couldn't screw that up. This is a guy that has potential to be star power, a guy who grew up right down the road in Chicago. I thought that move made a lot of sense for them.
Absolutely. And I think Parker is the most polished player in the draft, and I think the best player to help right away. And it seems like a big win-win for them. And certainly growing up in Chicago, I know how close it is to Milwaukee. And they have a nice little future there with the Greek Freak. And if they can get Sanders kind of under control, and they have some other good pieces in Henson, so they have a nice little nucleus there. They can kind of keep it together and develop. And who knows, if Larry Drew can keep it together and get them to the next level. But I like what they did.
Yeah, they got some nice pieces over in Milwaukee. I think a couple more years, maybe they get themselves back in playoff contention. Philadelphia is an interesting scenario, Coach, because they take Joel Embiid, who I think has the most upside in this draft. And they also take Dario Saric from Croatia, who's another guy that they can stash for a while. So how does a 7-footer like Embiid, who's has a potential Hakeem Olajuwon ceiling, pair up with someone like Nerlens Noel, who's already there?
I think that they're just slowly building what they want to get. And this is a 3-4 year plan. I'm very impressed that Sam Hinkie's going to have enough time to do this. It seems like everyone's committed to that. They have some nice pieces. I think Nerlens Noel will probably be better than anybody else in this draft.
Really? Nerlens Noel?
If his knee is not an issue, I feel like he's been training for a year with pro staffs on his weight, on his strength, and on his skills. None of the other guys in this draft have been doing that at the pro level without having to go to class and get distracted by that stuff. So I feel like he's going to hit the ground running and be much more effective than most of these guys in the draft. Easy.
Really interesting. I'm still very high on Embiid as long as he's able to stay healthy. He's got the back and the foot issues, but I think that upside is just too great. And Philly made a terrific move, and they basically get to suck for another year, and it's all sort of worth it for Sam Hinkie and that team. Aaron Gordon goes to Orlando, Coach, and this is a guy that's got incredible athleticism. Some people say they remind him at a complete ceiling of Blake Griffin, and I didn't like the pick at the time because I thought they needed a point guard, but then they got one in Peyton from Louisiana Lafayette. So you get a guy with an upside like Blake Griffin. No reason why you don't roll the dice if you're Orlando.
Yeah, and I've been hearing a little bit more of like Sean Marion as well. And
yeah.
The thing I like about him the most is his defense, because he seems like he can guard multiple positions, and he's a crazy good athlete. I don't think he's very polished. I think offensively he's got a lot of work to do, and a lot of times when the NBA season starts to get going, if you haven't caught up quickly enough, then you're going to be for a load of pain when you're on the offensive side of the ball. So I don't know if I expect him to do too much this year, at least with the ball and scoring, but certainly he should have an impact on the other side.
Utah kind of lucked into their #5 spot because they had Dante Exum as I think one of their top guys, and eventually he ended up falling to them. A lot of people listed him as a point guard. They have Trey Burke there, but this is a guy with really good size, a guy that can score. So you have the two guys with point guard mentalities. How do you think both of them will work in Utah's system?
I think that they might end up doing something else. I mean, they got Alec Burks as well, so they have a couple of these guards that like to handle the ball a lot already. And then, if you want to switch over to the 2-guard a little bit, well, whether or not what happens with free agency with them, with Gordon Hayward, then it's an interesting fit. They're going to have to kind of juggle some things and see how that works. And we'll see. I mean, so much hype is around him. Nobody has really seen him. I saw him in person, like drinking water, but I couldn't get anything from that. So I don't know. It's a crapshoot for what Dante Exum is going to do this year.
It got interesting in Boston at #6 because they took Marcus Smart, the point guard from Oklahoma State. A lot of people see him maybe as more of a combo 1-2 type guard. I wonder how you think he fits in Brad Stevens' offense because he was very up-tempo at Oklahoma State.
I don't know. I mean, what I've seen of him, he's just a really strong, bigger guard. I don't know. Brad Stevens is a great coach, and I have faith that he'd be able to get anybody who wants to learn to fit into his system. But I don't know. We'll have to see. Certainly, it feels like Rondo's gone, and they're going to want to, groom Marcus Smart to be that next point guard. So I think he should be able to plug in relatively well and learn to be effective over the next 2 years.
I think you're right, and I think particularly with someone like Smart, for a guy like Brad Stevens to roll the dice on him, especially when he doesn't seem like the typical Brad Stevens type of player, I think that certainly says something to the type of talent that he has, considering where he could have been picked a season ago. We're going through the top 10 picks with Coach Nick. I'm Ben Heisler. You can follow us on Twitter at BBallBreakdown. I'm at Benny Heis. Lakers, team where you are currently at, my friend. Julius Randle is a terrific pick for me. I thought he had the second best overall offensive game so far in this draft. You get some more offense to LA. They usually tend to like that out there. He's fearless around the rim, which is something that it's very hard to teach a guy who's only 19 years old. You're in LA. Do you think that was the right position for them to address?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look on their roster right now, they got Ryan Kelly, as they're pretty much their only guy that's on the books as a power forward. So there's no doubt that was a major upgrade at that position, and he is certainly the best player that was available. So I think the Lakers lucked out big time.
I think they did too. Staying in California, Coach, they went with the Sacramento Kings went with Nik Stauskas, and who a lot of people say he's the best shooter, best overall shooter in the draft. But they have guys that can shoot in Rudy Gay and Ben McLemore. It seemed a bit confusing to me.
I hear you on that, but this guy's a combo guard, and from what I understand, they feel very strong that he can actually play both the point guard and shooting guard positions. And if he can really handle the ball that well and do that, then that's a really big. You can't pass up a shooter like that. Now, who knows what's going to happen with the Kings and if they're going to keep dealing, because it seems like they're open to a lot of different possibilities. But I had a conversation with Nik Stauskas at the draft combine in Chicago. Very impressed by the kid. Really knew his stuff. Really understood about shooting. So I anticipate this guy, being an elite shooter very quickly.
Yeah, and played for a terrific coach in John Beilein at the University of Michigan as well. The Hornets at number 9 got a guy that I think a lot of people projected to be somewhere in that 4 to 7 range with Noah Vonleh, the power forward out of Indiana. A lot of people think upside he can be the best rebounder in this draft and ultimately one of the top 5-10 rebounders in the league. Where do you stand on him as a 4, and do you think he's a good fit with Zeller at the 5?
I think that can work. I like Zeller. I still have a lot of hope that he'll be a really impact player. And Vonleh is, very good athletic skills, but again, not as polished, it looks to me, on the offensive end. And he's going into a decent situation with as a growing culture of winning. So I think he'll be okay, but I wouldn't expect too much from him, in this first year.
And then finally, Philadelphia had the number 10 pick, and they went ahead and got Saric to go ahead and stash away. So I kind of want to cheat a little bit because the Chicago Bulls had that number 11 pick. They traded up with Denver to get Dougie McBuckets, Doug McDermott, out of Creighton, the NCAA MVP this season. This is a guy that can score. This is a guy that has underrated athleticism, and I think he's going to learn how to play defense under Tom Thibodeau. I really like the pick for Chicago.
Absolutely. I mean, if you have a guy like Carlos Boozer starting for you and you're a top 5 defense, then clearly they could have McDermott out there as well. They can figure out how to cover for him. So I think that it's a much needed jolt of offensive ability that they've been looking for, and it's just a question of him finding his niche and how he's going to be able to fit in. If he's going to be like a stretch 4, are they going to maybe try him at the 3 in certain spots? Once they can kind of get him settled in there and figure out how to best use him, I suspect he'd be just a terrific player.
Yeah, I heard Tom Thibodeau saying after the draft so far that they view him as an absolute complete player, that they view him as much more than a scorer. So again, that's our look at the top 10 picks so far. And again, I wanted to reach a little bit because the Bulls had him at number 11. He's Coach Nick. I'm Ben. Thanks for watching.